These are the Canis Lupus playing cards by my friend the Card Mechanic. This is an absolutely gorgeous deck, and let's get into this deck review right now. But before we do, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to both me and him, which I'll leave his channel down in the description below. Let's get into this one right now. This is a purple tuck case with a wolf on the front that is done like a knight in a chess game. On the one side, you see the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. And I believe that is a quote from the more modern, in-person Jungle Book movie. On the back, you're going to have a version of the back design. The top is going to be an amethyst gemstone, and on the bottom it says Canis Lupus Alpha Edition and some USPC ad copy. On the inside large tuck flap, you see a wolf doesn't concern itself with the opinions of the sheep, and the two smaller inside tuck flaps are completely blank. Now that's enough about the tuck box, so let's take a look at the cards. The back design is absolutely gorgeous. You have two wolves sitting diagonally, done on a deep purple background, and a medium-ish white border. Depending on the card, I don't know if this is just my deck, but some of them are a little bit off-center. Not by a ton though, so it won't be extremely noticeable to spectators. But for people who are card enthusiasts, again, it's just USPCC, so we're not really that surprised, but it is unfortunate that it happened. And it is two-way, because Vinit would lose his mind if he saw anything else. And speaking of that, let's look at the Queen of Hearts. Now, you don't know Vinit as well as I do. You know him as the Card Mechanic. I've known him as a friend, and he loves one-way design. Unfortunately for him, I don't think he picked up on this when designing this, because he took the same chords as what you see in a normal everyday USPCC deck. But this Queen of Hearts is actually a one-way. So if you look, there's the two white banners that go from the flower on the top right down to where the neck part is. And it goes on both sides. On the one side, you'll see that it's a perfect line, but unfortunately when you flip it over, the other side has a small triangle, making the Queen of Hearts a one-way card in this two-way deck. So Vinit, although it truly does not bother me at all, and it can make for some fun things when I like to perform different magic tricks, I just wanted to point this out to you for your next deck, and so I can mess with you a little bit. Now, when you're looking at the number cards, you're going to see that all of the blacks stay black, but all of the reds are now purple. And the same goes for your three aces. Your court cards are now only done in gray, black, white, and purple. Now, a couple that I would like to point out, we have the King of Spades, which is actually Vinit himself, and then we have a duplicate King of Diamonds, but this time holding an amethyst gemstone. Your jokers are almost completely duplicates. Both jokers have the wolf as the chess piece, as the knight, but this time the wolf is done in a more realistic fashion. You have a V on the front, which I'm assuming is for Vinit, and it says Joker in purple on the bottom. But the second Joker you're going to see in the bottom left corner has a Two of Spades reveal. Your Ace of Spades before getting to the last card is a wolf, which is the same one you saw on the front of the tuck box, this time saying Canis Lupus Alpha Edition. And of course, Alpha Edition means that there will be multiple additions to this deck. Now, one thing that I do think that he could have done is taken a reveal and put it into the middle of the wolf on either the tuck box or this Ace of Spades to make it look a little bit cooler, kind of reminiscent of the White Lions. And last but not least, we have the Canis Lupus ad card. It says Canis Lupus Alpha Edition. An alpha wolf can be violent and assertive when the situation calls for it, but for the most part, it leads with the strength, metal, and heart. And behind this is the same wolf. And at the very bottom, which I've been covering up with my finger this entire time, is actually a QR code that you would be able to scan, and it's changing. So this QR code can change from time to time, and it will change from currently what it is as a video, which I will not reveal the contents of, to eventually being something else, which again, I cannot talk about because that's what it says in the video. Now, if you want to see what that is, just go ahead and check out the link in the description where I have left the Card Mechanic shop so you can pick them up. And lastly, let's take a look at this really cool sticker. So it's super small. It fits in the palm of my hand quite nicely. It's actually just about the same size as my pinky and the exact same size as the tuck box wolf. So super cool. Definitely going to be putting this on something, although I haven't quite figured out what that's going to be yet. But I do think this is a really cool addition to this project. Now, even after all that, there's some things that you need to know before purchasing a deck, or even if you just like looking at cards, there's some things you need to know about. First of all, can this deck Pharaoh? So let's take a look and see from the bottom to the top, this deck Pharaohs every other absolutely beautifully. So absolutely no problem there. And then from top to bottom, you're going to see that we're checking this out for the first time as well. Wow, that was actually much easier than the other way. So, fairing, absolutely no issue. Fanning looks pretty good. I do wish there were more contrast between the blacks and the purples, but he already mentioned that in one of his videos. So, fanning, again, looks fine. Nothing above and beyond, but in all fairness, it's not really meant for that. It's meant for doing simple magic. It's not meant for going out and doing cardistry like Virtuoso or anything else, so still just fine. Now, that's not saying this doesn't work for cardistry, which I'll get into in a little bit. Now, the next thing you want to know is how this deck feels if you get this deck in your hands. Is it super thick? Is it super thin? Is it stiff? Is it snappy? Is it buttery? How does it feel? What are you going to need to know? So let's first talk about the finish, the actual stuff that goes on the cards. It is from USPCC. It's not on smooth finish. It's just on the air cushion, which means it's going to handle beautifully. That's what I'm going to be using. It's what everybody should use, because smooth finish is garbage. This is the way to go. Now, since I can't just take this deck and shove it through the screen so you can know how this deck feels in your hands, I have two ways of explaining it to you. The first way is how it feels, and the second way is how thick it is. So I'm going to switch those two and then explain it to you right now. So how thick is it? Well, there's only really two options, plus adding in crushed stock. So you have thinner stocks, you have middle of the line, and you have thick stocks. So when you're printing through USPCC, you have classic stock, which is what Bicycle uses, and then you have premium stock. Those are the only two. Then you can either crush it or not. So really, there's four options. Classic crushed, classic, premium crushed, premium. That's it. Now this deck right here, this deck is a premium deck, but it feels like it's crushed. Now, it hasn't been crushed, and it still has the same thickness as not being crushed, but it has the butteriness of being crushed. It's amazing. So if you've had the ability to handle the Slow Hands V1 deck, which just sold out, so congrats to Kier, that is one deck that we'd be like, wow, these two decks feel a lot the same. Super buttery, still super thick, feels great in your hands. Now, when it comes to the other side, just what I was talking about to you before, how it feels in your hands, you have buttery, snappy or crispy, and then stiff where you can't even move it. This one is definitely in buttery. Now luckily it's not buttery to the point to where you can't do snappy moves like hot shot or back palms or different backdrop or these flicker shot. There's so many moves that you can do that require a deck to be more snappy. And this is not one that just says I am only this. It has a good bit of both, but 100%, like when you're doing something like Under Pressure, this absolutely glides. Now, after all of this, you have still a few things to consider. Should I buy it, or shouldn't I? That's really it. Should you or shouldn't you? Now, I do have one last thing to help you decide if you should get this deck. Who are you? Okay, who are you? So let's go through a couple of different scenarios. If you're a magician, definitely think you should pick this deck up. One, super simple back design, nothing over the top and crazy about it. It's not marked, so you don't have to worry about that. You can do so many things with this deck. It comes in pretty classic, so when you look at the faces, it shouldn't be hard for the spectators to figure out what they are. And you do have a Two of Spades reveal on one of the duplicate jokers. Again, both things that are great for Magic. I do wish there was something on either the court cards, or since he's holding an amethyst, if there was a way to have that, like David Blaine uses for Indigo, if there was a way we could kind of merge those two types of themes. So many different ways that we could do this. I just wish there was a little bit more above and beyond. Super cool looking deck. Not saying it's not, but I wish there was a little bit more intention for magicians. Now, outside of that, if you're a cardist, I definitely think you can pick this deck up. Like, there's definitely a lot of moves that I can do that would make this deck look good. From that to Cascade to, honestly, just so many moves. And the contrast between the purple and the white is going to look great for a lot of tricks. Plus, the faces being customized, cardistry shouldn't be a problem. Now, it's not borderless, it's not broken border. Again, it's not a cardistry intended deck. It's more of a Magic intended deck. But at the same time, 100% can do cardistry with this deck. So if you're a cardist, sure, go ahead and pick it up. Next is collectors. Now, there's two different types of collectors. The one is the more the stingy types of collectors, but no hate to you guys. It's more of a, we only deal with things that are low print run or high amounts of money. And then there's the other side, where it's more like me, where it's, I like cards that look cool, that go on a shelf like that, or are in a series. So you can collect all of the Virtuosos, or the Cherries, or the Monarchs, or whatever. Now, if you're on that side, it's probably not for you. It wasn't a super low print run. I believe it was 1,000 decks. And so it's not a super low print run. Again, it is a low print run, but it's not super low. So that one you're going to flip yourself a coin and hope that it lands on heads for these cards because they're amazing. Now, the other side is if you're on this side, I would 100% pick this deck up. 1, looks super dope. 2, there's not a lot of purple decks, excluding the fact that anyone worldwide unfortunately just put out more cards, and this time they were purple. No hate to anyone. That was the company. But not a big fan of hype decks. And this is going to be in a series. So at the same time, you're going to have this being the alpha edition, and you get to be one of the OGs who purchased one of the first 1,000 decks. And now you're going to have the V1s. Imagine if you would have done that with Orbit. If you would have been one of the OGs that has, like, right now, like, the V3s and stuff. That stuff is worth money now, right? This could be the same thing, depending on how well it's built up and depending if you buy the freaking cards. Now, again, this wasn't sponsored. I bought this on my own money. And can you play card games with them? Of course. And is this a hype deck? Heck no. So if you want to pick up these cards, I will leave the link to them in the description below so you can check out all of these cards. You can check out which package you want. You can check out the stickers and everything else that comes along with this super cool deck and the future decks that will be coming out soon. You'll get access to that QR code, which will then lead you to the video and that page, which will then be changing at a later date. I see no problem with you picking this deck up literally as we're speaking. So if you want to pick this deck up, I'll leave it in the first link in the description below, and Card Mechanic and all of his stuff I'll leave down there as well in case you want to check out the creator of this deck. But that's enough talking. Please make sure to join me next week all 3 times because we're putting up so many freaking videos because I love you guys. So if you guys ever want to see anything, let me know down in the comments and I'll make it happen. This is Card Perfect, signing off.